acknowledge the traditional custodians of the South East Nation, the Malakadee people of the Yorn River, and the Liliquani people of the Far South. We recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. Tonight we have in attendance Deputy Mayor Thorpe, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Jessup, Councillor Robertson, Councillor Gibson, Councillor O'Neill, thank you, Councillor Burgess and Councillor Rozak. Would you like to introduce your staff, please?
Sure. Tonight we have General Counsel Matthew Grimsey, Director of Community and Place Lyle Ground, Director of Infrastructure and Assets Frank Chen, Director of People and Corporates Paddy Johnson, and we've got support staff, Innovation and Technology Project Officer Connor Watson and Executive Assistant Olga Bath.
Thank you. So there's no apologies tonight, there's no leave of absence and no absence from tonight. Councillors, does anyone wish to declare an interest in any of tonight's agenda items? No?
Ma'am, I'll ask you a question again. With the Dover men's shed one, I have a contract with Tomra to provide a depot in Hobart, and
Through your other employment?
through Nexus. It, in a way, it competes with that, but it doesn't, sort of thing. But I don't think it's it's not pecuniary. But I'm just declaring it, Matt. I'm just happy to have it noted, and I don't feel there's a conflict of interest in that sense.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks for that. 4.004/25. Do I have a councillor to move a motion that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council 26th March 2025 as circulated be confirmed? Councillor Robertson and Councillor Armstrong. Do councillors wish to report any changes?
No.
Well, I'll put that motion forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. Do we have any legislative items tonight?
No.
Urgent matters?
Yes, we have one.
Thank you.
So I'll bring forward the following matter, which relates to the Department of Health. So in accordance with Regulation 8.6 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulations 2015, I'm reporting that the matter was not included on the agenda for the meeting as the new proposal was received as the agenda was being finalised, and officers were unable to consider the proposal before the agenda was finalised. The matter is urgent as to ensure that delays are minimised to the proposal and project, and the qualified advice is provided for councillors by way of a report to council. So the recommendation is pursuant to Regulation 8.6 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulations 2015, the urgent matters of Department of Health be listed on the agenda in closed council for discussion as agenda item 19.023/25.
Okay, councillors, I'll put that forward. All those in favour, please raise your... Yep. Oh, we need a mover, sorry. I need a mover for that, yes. And Deputy Mayor Thorpe. And then we just go straight to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Thank you. So Mayor's announcements tonight. I have a couple that I need to, so bear with me. Anzac Day. We had, I think attendances were up in all services around the valley. I would just like to put a thank you out to the Scouts groups, the Progress Associations, the fire brigades and the sub-branches that run these events. They do a marvellous job, and so I'd just like to put a thank you out to all those. Election Day on Saturday. Please, if you haven't voted, don't forget, you can go to the aec.gov.au website to find where polling booths and what time they're on. So please don't forget to vote. We have our community survey. Lisa will be visiting Dover on Monday the 5th from 10:30 to 1:30, and she's located in the bottom shop in the shopping centre at the Larder and Deli. And yeah, so please turn up and have a chat about all things that are important to you in the Dover area. And I'd just like to put it out there for everyone to know that the community survey so far, as at the 29th of April, we have 1,010 surveys in so far, and they are broken up with Ewellville, Ranelagh 345, Cygnet and Surrounds 287, Franklin area 130, Dover 119, and Geefton 129. So yes, please, if you haven't filled one out, that'd be great if you could. We have a Jobs Expo on next Wednesday, the 7th of May, over at the Trade Training Centre. That's being run by the Southern Employment Services. Is that what they're called now? Southern Training, that's right.
Training Network,
Yeah,
yep.
that's it. And it's over at the Trade Training Centre at 9:30. And yes, they've got some flyers out and they've got some information. If you need any more, can you just call council and we'll give you some more information if needed. And we're in the month of May, we have National Road Safety Week. It goes from the 11th to the 18th of May. Council is contributing to that again this year. We'll be having on the Monday a display up in Woolworths car park with Tas Police and SES. And then on the Wednesday we have our staff breakfast with our local contractors. And then on the Thursday we're going to the Ewellville High School to speak to the students that will be getting their L's and their P's, and the SES will be demonstrating with the cutting of a car at a road accident. So yeah. So they're just our notices that we have with things that are happening in the next few weeks. So okay, on to 8.1. Point 1 is answers to questions taken on notice. There was no questions taken on notice from previous meeting. 8.1.2 was questions given on notice. There was 3 questions. There was one from Andy Waterhouse, Lorraine Lovell and Dawn Castle Paul regarding flag flying on Australia Day. That response to that is on our website and included in the minutes. We also have 2 from Jeffrey Swan regarding non-compliant dwelling and childcare facilities in the Yuin Valley, and the same, that will be available on our website and in the minutes. There were 2 questions emailed in for tonight's meeting from Irene Gill regarding election signs and media outlets. The same thing, the response will be available on our website and included in the minutes, but we're also, because it has had a lot of media attention, we thought that we would respond with the answer. I'm going to hand it over
Sure.
to the
Yeah,
CEO.
thank you. Just to take again the opportunity to apologise to Peter George's team for the error that we made. We made it in good faith. It's a human error, and we've corrected it. And I've been in touch with Peter George's team throughout that process when it became, as soon as I became aware of it. With regards to any misunderstanding, miscommunication of how it's been reported in the media, I released a media statement to correct the record and to essentially provide that, the criticality was to provide that apology and do it swiftly, given the imperative of we're in the middle of an election campaign. My media release was factual, and I can't speak for how the media has chosen to conduct themselves around this issue. So once again, apologise, and as the Mayor said, this is we've got a full written response which does contain a chronology of the process Council undertook to maintain communication with Peter George's team through the process, which was extensive, leading up to the removal of that sign. Thanks.
Thank you. Yep, thank you very much. Okay, so now we're on to public question time, and we have only one in the gallery tonight. So if you would like to ask a question, you can come forward, and thank you.
Thank you, Liz Smith, Cygnet. Before I ask my question, I just wondered if I could make a comment on the report in the Huon News today. because I found it quite amusing. I don't know where it came from, but I liked that it was, the report last week was that it was removed by vandals. Most significant was the entire and very neat removal of a large billboard on the highway at Carisford. Vandals are not known for being slick or particularly tidy, and the evaporation of the billboard was both. So I thought that's really nice that the council is both slick and tidy and is able to reverse evaporation. Thank you for doing that.
Yes, very good.
I had another comment, if I may, before I ask the question. It's been really good to see that the speed limit between Huonville and Craddock has been reduced to 80. It was, I thought, quite dangerous before that. And I think it also improves traffic flow because you don't have people trying to overtake other people, because most people go around 80 except at night. And reducing that speed limit has also led me to think that perhaps it's time to get the speed limit reduction on Nichols Rivulet Road. I don't know if council has a role to play there. From the Channel Highway up to Smiths, just above Smiths Road, where it becomes a 70 kilometre an hour speed limit, it's 100 kilometres an hour. And I think that's too much. The other day I was driving up there and I was faced with a vehicle on my side of the road overtaking another vehicle, and it would have been going at 100. So if the council has any role in getting that speed limit down, that would be really great. Not really a question, but a request.
We'll take it as a request.
Thank you. I do have a question which relates to agenda number 15.016. Stroke 25, which is the audit panel report. At the February meeting of the Huon Valley Council, the councillors, in their roles of planning authority, when they're required to abide by the requirements set out in the Land Use and Planning Approvals Act, LUPA, had to make a decision on a planning application. The proposal was to convert an existing shack at Surveyors Bay to visitor accommodation, presumably to add value to the property either before sale or in order to gain ongoing income from visitors. The application was clearly recommended for refusal by the planning staff because the entire site of the dwelling is within the high coastal erosion hazard band, which precludes the conversion of a dwelling to visitor accommodation. Despite this very clear advice from staff, Councillor Robertson moved an alternative motion to approve the change of use, claiming that the coastal hazard zone was not necessarily applied correctly at that site. Eventually, the majority of councillors supported the approval, despite the staff advice at the meeting, as well as in the agenda. During debate, Councillor Mrozek, speaking against the motion, emphasised that there was another avenue for approval, acknowledging that this would take time and be more costly to the owner, and the council staff agreed and made it very clear that their advice complied with LUPA, which is very complex legislation. This month's report from the audit panel meeting discusses the council's approval of a planning application for a prohibited use against the recommendation for refusal by planning staff. And this raises serious questions about whether some councillors, acting as a planning authority under LUPA, understood that approving the proposed change of use to visitor accommodation would be a serious breach of the Act, and that, as stated by the audit panel, making such decisions introduces unacceptable and unnecessary risks, including potential personal liability for relevant councillors as an offence under and subject to penalties set out in LUPA. The recommendation of the audit panel is that council considers the issue of delegation of power to refuse a development application in such circumstances. The matter would not then need to be referred to the council. And this proposal supports a view that councillors may be swayed by requests from residents for assistance in planning matters and/or may not have sufficient understanding of LUPA. So I have a couple of questions. Is the potential that decisions in breach of LUPA and against the advice of staff are likely to encourage the imposition of development assessment panels, DAPs, and thus limit the important role of local government as a planning authority? So that's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, would this risk be avoided by the delegation of power rather than bringing such a matter before councillors?
Okay, thank you. That's a tough one. There has been an issue identified. It was taken to the audit panel, and that's why there's a recommendation for consideration tonight. So, so thanks for the question, but
So
that's,
I am concerned that I think the state government wants to introduce development assessment panels, and I don't think that council should be giving them any more reasons why they might want to do that, because the development assessment panels are less democratic than councils.
Look, I understand the inference. There's many reasons why good governance is critical to what we do, and that's certainly a potential risk.
Thank you very much.
all right, thank you. Yes. Yeah, all right, don't have to, no, all right. Okay, thank you. 8.2, is there any deputations tonight or petitions? No? Okay, agenda item 10.004/25 has been withdrawn from tonight's council meeting by the applicant. So, yeah, we have no other planning reports for tonight to consider. So on to 11. 11 point, sorry. Are there any councillors tonight tabling their activities?
Yes, ma'am.
And would anyone like to speak to those? Yes, we'll start with Andrew, Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Mayor. Back in March, I had the privilege of attending the opening of the Neville Smith and Shep Pallet construction plant. It was a real eye-opener to see the efficiency of how quickly they can turn a small log into a blue pallet at the other end. I think it was 30 minutes from when they start, and once it starts, it's 1,800 pallets a day. And the very good news is that there's 106 people employed out there, so I know quite a few of them, and I talked to about 6, I think, on the day, and they're just absolutely rapt that, this business has progressed to such a stage now that it's sustainable, and I believe in the near future everything will be cut out of plantation timber, which is just a really good use of our resources in the Yuin. And I equate 106 people working there, 106 families being employed in the forest in the Yuin, which is all good. So it was a real pleasure to attend, actually.
Thank you. Is that all, Andrew? Yep. Yep, okay. The other ones were Amy, yes?
Olga's kindly included an item on my monthly report, but I'm not sure whether it should be or not. I was appointed a couple of months ago as the Legat representative on the State Fire Management Council. So I applied for that or expressed interest in that, and it's not a role I hold as a Huon on behalf of the Huon Valley.
It's still a local government.
But it's very much local government, so whether to include that on my report or
that's
not.
fine.
But yeah, I went to my first one of those meetings, which was very interesting, and deals with some of the policy and performance monitoring and enabling around fire management and prevention of bushfires. So it's interesting stuff and challenging.
Well done. Thank you very much. Someone else, did you have anyone, Paul, did you, someone else have their hand up there? No? Toby? No? No one else? All right. That's it. Thank you very much. 11.004/25, do I have a councillor to move a motion that the general reports and minutes from the period 1 to 31st of March 2025 be received and noted? Councillor Jessup and seconded Councillor Gibson. Do you wish to speak to any of the general reports and minutes?
There's nothing specific, ma'am, but they're very good to see that people are very busy.
They have been, that's for sure. Don't have anyone to speak against any of the motion, no?
No,
Yep.
not against.
Yep.
Sorry, Matt. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Just a quick comment on infrastructure and asset highlights. The raised pedestrian one-way crossing in Signet has been installed. That's probably already a few weeks in place, but as I have been away overseas, and after coming back, being able to use it the first time, and then also to talk to local businesses straight opposite of the crossing, I was quite happy to hear that they are all happy with the solution. Whilst there's been a little bit of a stir previously, prior to the works, concerning loss of car parks and customers for those businesses, I was more than happy to hear that nobody actually lost any business. And everybody's happy with the installation, with the process, how it all went smoothly, and now the crossing being in place. There was one small comment from one of the businesses which basically just concerns the usage of the alleyway between the town hall and those businesses, which was intended to be connecting those two car parks. It seems like nobody's using it because it's a little bit too uninviting. The lighting is fairly poor, was commented on, and it's just not obvious that this is the main thoroughfare for, connecting those two car parks. So whilst the perception of the crossing itself is, quite good, the usage of the alleyway is still under what it could be. And just as a, comment and note from local businesses in that area, to pass that on, so that we maybe, I don't know, the lighting that's installed is on the side of the town hall. We're working on the Signet Town Hall in the future, as I understand it. So maybe there is potential to allocate some funds to actually make this alleyway a bit more interesting for people and actually use it, because currently apparently everybody is just walking through the gravel car park behind the shops, which is quite unsafe compared to the alleyway that's actually right there.
Thank you for that. That's great.
Thank you.
Yes, you go, Mark. Yep.
Mayor, I just want to refer to page 61 of the written papers here, just around the HR report, basically. Very pleasing to see that of all the recruitment that we've taken place, all of those jobs were advertised externally, and that is a significant improvement on when we first came into this chamber. So congratulate the staff to do that, but also the staff turnover trends. I know it's only year to date, so it's probably 3 quarters, I'm assuming. So even if you add another quarter's worth of turnover, we're at most probably 5% voluntary turnover this year compared to 14.8, 14.9, 14.9 over the last 3 years, and even 8. Well, there's sort of nothing, I think, that will be even twice of what we've got now. So we're half the lowest rate that we've had in the last 7 or 8 years. So I think that's a congratulations to the management team and giving us some indication that people are getting back on track and they're doing well.
Yes, Councillor Robertson.
On Port Huon Sports Centre, a comment, I guess, there's a early proposal for some work around the change rooms, a comment that the space for family change rooms needs to be larger in that design, thinking about 1 to 2 adults and maybe 3 or 4 kids in a room. but the numbers are quite spectacular. And my question is what are the financial implications of that around our centre's budget? How much over our projection are those actual numbers in the first couple of months?
I don't think any of us will be able to answer that on the spot, but we can take it on notice and come back to you. It's pools still cost a lot to run, but as we said, if we're going to invest in it, we're going to absolutely have to promote it and get that utilisation to the maximum extent. And the team's hard work, that's certainly showing. And it's just awesome to see families in there using it. Every time I drive past now, there's heaps of cars in the car park, and just makes me think we've got to expand the car park now. But that's just you just keep on rolling.
Yeah. So thank
But
you.
we'll take it on notice to get you the financial stats.
I just found that quite interesting, and I know that's been an underlying question with the facility for many years. So it would be interesting how that affects something different.
Yes, you'd like to have a comment? Yes.
I'd like to point to page 53. So there's a comparison, the February 23 versus February 25, the patronage increase, and there's a significant increase
Yeah.
after the reopening.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Is our budget's based on those previous figures? Our
Yeah.
budget projection for revenue from entries?
So that's we're still in the exploring or assessing whether this is just because everyone get excited to come to the pool, or this is going to be a
Yeah,
trajectory,
Yes,
long-term benefit.
that's right. Yep. Yes, that's right. We'll wait and see what the next lot. Yeah, well done. Thank you. Do I have any others? Yes?
Yeah, just around the climate and coastal resilience, just with regard to my local road being undermined by the surge from the, I guess, higher water. I'm just wondered whether there is preventative work that can be done in those sort of situations to avoid expense in the future. I guess that's the question.
There's an engineering solution for everything, but
Yeah.
there's a cost.
But if the cost saves.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's what where we need to embark on a pretty significant program of assessing those coastal risks across our municipality, and then having a plan to whether it's defence or retreat or something in between. But they're the realities we face. Yeah.
I believe that also becomes part of our push federally when it comes to all the areas that we have around Australia. Do we just keep fixing something, or, as we've talked about before, do we build better? But to be able to afford that, we would have to have more federal money to be able to do that. So go, Amy. You go to Canberra. Speak out loud. Thanks for that. Councillor Jessup, do you wish to?
No, I think I'm happy with that, but yeah, good work.
Okay, well, I'll put that motion forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Okay, our workshops, they're all have been listed and noted.
Take them as read. Yep.
Thank you. 13.1, answers to questions taken on notice. There was 2 councillor questions taken on notice from the March council meeting. One was from Councillor Gibson regarding the suicide awareness course and weed management, and one from Councillor Thorpe regarding bulk cost savings for solar panels, and the responses will be included in the minutes. There was no questions given on notice. Without notice, there was one councillor question without notice emailed in from Councillor Rozak regarding the recycling rewards program, and response will be included in the minutes. Councillors, are there any questions without notice for tonight's meeting? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question relating to one of the questions asked in public question time via email, emailed in the agenda by Andy Waterhouse. Andy Waterhouse, Lorraine, sorry, I just can't find it. Lorraine Lovell and Dawn Castle-Paul. The question was regarding the flying of the Australian flag on Australia Day. Apparently, it was not flown this year on Australia Day, and the question was towards why this wasn't happening. It was perceived as disrespectful. I think what I want to ask is, can there be context provided, please, on how this has been different to the past? Is it the first time this has happened, or is it something that's already quite, a procedure for quite some time and just hasn't been picked up by the public before? Because I think the question is asked, rightfully so. The answer is given, sufficiently to my understanding, but I think what it lacks is a little bit of context. Like, it seems like this happened for the first time. I'm not quite sure that this is really the case, and I would like to, maybe council provide some clarification for the context, if possible.
Not a problem. I've done a little bit of thought. I put some thought into this after we had a conversation today. And as mayor, I have completed the last 3 citizenships either on or around Australia Day. 2022 was held on Australia Day at the Palais, and we still had our Australia Day awards that year. So we were at the Palais, so we wouldn't have been here at the Town Hall. So the flag, we take our flags behind us to citizenship on Australia Day. We did, and we still do now to citizenship if we go somewhere else. So that was done on the 26th of January on Australia Day at the Palais. In 2023, the government advised us that we could do Australia Day citizenships 3 days either side. But because it was January when they informed us of this, we already had our certificates and our dated, and we proceeded with having citizenship on Australia Day at the Cygnet Town Hall. We didn't have our Australia Day awards because we'd moved those from having them on Australia Day, but we did have citizenship on that day, but that was at Cygnet, not here in the Town Hall. So in 2024, we held our citizenship on the 24th of January in the Town Hall, and we would have flown the flag because it was not on a public holiday. We were here working. This year, on the 25th, we held it on the 23rd of January in the Town Hall, and we would have flown the flag because the staff were here to do that. So this year was not the first time that we have not flown the flag at the front of the council here. And we were also advised, I think we had some information from Deepak, I think, on, that there was some wording that came from them, and I think that email came in, I don't know whether that was.
It's part of the flag protocols and the process that we've always followed. There is no, I think there's a feeling publicly that we must fly the flag on Australia Day and Anzac Day. There isn't. It's certainly encouraged. But in the advice that's received from both Deepak at a state level and federally, that advice that encouragement to fly the flag also notes that organisations should be aware of the financial and resourcing implications of flying the flag. So, albeit modest, they're telling us to be aware of that. So, I guess the mayor's talked through some of the recent history. My understanding of it is that council has never made a decision to not fly the flag on Australia Day. Council used to, as was common practice, celebrate and have Australia Day as an event in the Huon Valley, at which time we celebrated citizenship and Australia Day award nominations. So it was an event, it was staffed, and the flag was flown on the building in which that was being held any one year, and the mayor's gone through, may have been the Palace, may have been Signet. When we were doing those, the flag was not being raised on this building or otherwise, it was being raised on the building where we were holding that event. Now that with the national discourse over the last couple of years around Australia Day and its potential divisiveness and the direction to go to not having Australia Day awards anymore, council no longer holds an event on Australia Day. So, given we're not holding an event, we don't have staff rostered on, we are not hoisting the flag on that particular day. It hasn't been intended as a mark of disrespect, it's simply that we are not rostered on or holding any event on those particular days. And it's certainly a relatively modest cost to do that. It would be requiring a staff member to come in, a staff member who's trained and understands the flag raising protocols, to come in and raise the flag. That's certainly something that councillors could put as a motion and that we would budget for and that we would do if that's a significant concern for the community and something that we need to mark as a show of respect.
Thank you very much.
Do I have any other? No, tonight? Yes? Yes? Yes?
Yeah, just a little one.
Yeah.
And I probably should have given somebody some notice on this. It's about FOGO. It seems to have gone very quiet in the Huon Valley. Any discussion on FOGO and the construction of the composting plant at the eastern side? Is possibly an upgrade or any new information on that at the moment?
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot that's changed that we're ready to share with councillors yet. There's certainly a lot of work going on in the background. We undertook the Great Wheelie Bin survey, which was one of the key pieces in that, FOGO works, but FOGO costs. And we already know that our community is cost sensitive, as they should be. We have a cost of living crisis. We need to be really careful that we can deliver FOGO at a reasonable price point, and certainly I'm convinced that over the long run, FOGO is an essential thing. There's different ways to deliver it, but I do think it's essential, and I do think it can, over the long run, deliver savings because landfill is only getting more and more expensive, and it just simply does not make sense to be putting quality organics into landfill. So I think all of us agree with that, but we need to get the economics of it right, and we already really push the margins of in our curbside program. We really push the margins. We are in a rural area. We send trucks into much less dense areas than many other councils, and FOGO is another bin, more trucks, more stuff. So we've gauged community interest, and certainly the evidence is that there is certainly interest from the community in doing that, which is great. There's that willingness to pay. We're putting that, putting more detail together, largely on the economics and how we're going to deliver it before we come back and start to make some decisions. Anything? You guys don't want to add anything? Yep.
Thank you. Yes?
Yeah, just another, maybe not a question as such, but just a comment. And again, it goes back to public question time, and this time the two questions that have been asked by Mr. Jeffrey Swan. I would just like to point, while he's, asking those questions, I would just like to point out that he's asking two different things at the same time, which are quite contradictory. And like where I'm concerned is, and is it just me who's seeing that way? But what I picked up is in the first question, he's asking why is council not employing a building surveyor, which is a valid point to make. I personally made the experience of using a council-employed building surveyor while I was extending our house, and I learned about the benefits of that financially, so I get the point. But he's basically inviting council to compete with the private sector by employing an in-house building surveyor. And in his second question, he's questioning exactly that and wondering why council is competing with the private sector by providing childcare services, which are basically, you know, not provided by the private sector to an extent that satisfies the need within our municipality. And I would just like to, point that out, and in the second instance ask if this is just me seeing it that way, or if there's, you know, like maybe general consent on this double standard. I don't know why he would, you know, do that. That's none of my business, but I just couldn't help but pick up that he's very contradictory in his questions, and I think it's only fair to say that he can't have it both ways.
Thank you. Is there any other, anyone else want to comment with Lucas? Yes?
Sorry, through you, Mayor. I think the thing to remember in response to that delivery is the fact that, you know, we have families in the Huon Valley that are having children and families that need to work. So there's very few privately run childcare centres in the Huon Valley, but there's a need for childcare for our valley to continue to grow and flourish. There are building surveyors around. It's difficult to you know, find one perhaps that suits your need at the time. But I think to put them into the same basket is quite different. They're separate baskets. They're totally separate baskets. And I think children are never going to go away, nor is building. But we have to provide services for what we have here and now that lack. And I think building surveyors in council, it's lovely, and I've also had that experience where I've had them. But at the end of the day, you can find one of those yourself. It's much harder to find a childcare space to put your child. So you know that the funding for the new centre will be amazing. Council already operate three centres, and there's not enough spaces. So if you had to choose which one was more important, I think the logical choice would be to say that, no, we're not competing with the childcare. What we're doing is enabling families to go to work. And I think that's probably the focus that I would be having. Building surveyors, yes, they're there, they're available, they're expensive, but when you choose to build your house, you expect that you're going to be able to have to find one of those yourself anyway. It comes with the complete package. It's unfortunate. We've all been in a situation where we've struggled, but I don't think you could make the comparison between the two. I think they're quite separate, so I agree with you on that one.
Thank you. All right, so if I have no other comments, well, thank you for that. I will move on to no notices of motions. No. 14.001/25.
I'll just make a note, just quickly, sorry.
Yeah.
Just, Councillor Morozek had asked a question without notice on the container refund scheme.
Yes.
And there is a written response to it.
Yeah.
Just to take the opportunity, maybe I wasn't listening, did you mention it earlier?
Yeah, I did.
That they are going to be open?
No, because I
Okay.
didn't, I thought there was,
Yeah, so just to quickly say that there are going to be two container deposit schemes open in the Huon Valley from tomorrow. So that's at the start of the scheme. One will be at Dover Men's Shed, and that's one of the smaller containerised, like vending machine style options. That's being hosted and run by the volunteers at the Men's Shed, so thank you very much to them. And you know, for users, you know, these guys are getting to know the system as well, I'm sure, so be kind when you're down there trying to deposit your bottles and cans. The other one is at Sparkles Car Wash in Huonville. That is a temporary mobile solution while they complete that's one of the larger systems ultimately that will be going in there, and they're completing their development application process before they can put that final larger solution in. but it's going to be up and running from tomorrow. The only other thing I'd say is that council will be promoting this stuff and providing information on things like how charity groups and et cetera can get involved and use this as a fundraising opportunity. We'll share the advice that's been given to us from the solution provider, but probably the most key component that's coming out of that is to download and use that Recycle Rewards app. It just sounds like the most efficient way to actually engage, to make it efficient and streamlined to get your rewards for recycling.
And we just, and especially,
There's 49 depots that go recycle points, and I have declared this interest, so I will say it again. You do have the Southwest has a bulk collection depot, which is in Goodwood, which is for bulk, so if you don't want to stand in front of a machine and
Feed them in.
put your thing. But the Recycle Rewards scheme has a website
Website,
that has all of the details of locations, because I can't remember how many there are in southern Tasmania, but I think there's 20 recycle points from here through to
It's supposed to be by the end of it that
49
85% of the state is within 10 kilometres of
there's
the
49
unit.
statewide,
Yeah.
but there's going to be 4 or 5 in Glenorchy and stuff. So there certainly will be anything from the 2 reverse vending machines to the 4 reverse vending machines to the depot. So there'll be at Goodwood, there'll be Eastern Shore, Launceston, Devonport, Burnie, and that's where you can take your. I know somebody who's got apparently 10 fertiliser bags full of containers waiting for the depot to operate. So yeah, oh, you do great. So it's a good move, and I know there's been some public criticism about the fact that containers have gone up, but it has a significant impact on littering and waste and recycling.
Absolutely, and we'll promote them more and provide the links, etc., to the community on where to go to get that information, because council doesn't run them. But it is just great to point out that they will be open from day one, albeit in a soft launch type
yeah,
state.
And there's
not
also
every day.
there's also a whole range of school groups, like Parents and Friends are starting to do collections, Scouts are involved in collections, Rotary I think are doing some collections. So there's a whole group of. You'll see there's an ecosystem that will evolve, that will hopefully give people plenty of chances to get rid of their tinnies.
And I think what we need to sort of stress with this, and as you say, it's great. We've been waiting for this for so long. That with the one at Dover, especially, it is at the men's shed. These guys are volunteers, like they. So we do have to remember about being kind. Like things are not all going to go perfectly all the time. So we just need to remember that we need to be mindful. So we will be advertising and putting out there, promoting the times that they're opened. I think it's only the 3 days that they're going to be for the moment, because they are what we call temporary for this minute, so that they're opening. And they do stress that, as the CEO said, that the best thing you can do is to register
Yeah, on the app.
on the app.
And you can get cash from the depots. Let me just.
Yeah, you'll get tokens and FPOS.
So do we actually envisage more sites being put in place as the scheme goes on, sort of like the Signet area with D1?
There won't be. There's nothing to say there'll be more collection scheme points. But what you can do as community groups is by registering to have bins, etc. So collection points on your site.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that
footy clubs.
Footy clubs, is a perfect example. Schools, all these things where you can collect it, you can bulk it up, and you can go and get those rewards back into the footy club.
Yeah.
The collection points across the state are as part of the legislation, and I can't see there's any appetite to actually put more vending machines in because they're quite expensive.
Yeah.
But as that ecosystem evolves, you'll have bowls clubs and all sorts of things collecting cans and hopefully taking on Goodwood.
You have declared an interest, haven't you?
I have. I'll keep declaring interest every time I mention it.
Yeah. So, thanks for that question.
Yeah.
And the answer is, will be included in the minutes, but we will be promoting that because it does start tomorrow. So just remember.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, CEO Grant, for, reminding me, because I emailed it in, and the usual way we deal with it is just response. This is the question, the responses in the minutes. It kind of got a little bit lost, but I asked, for not a personal interest, but for our Signet community. I'm involved with this Signet Primary School, and we're always looking for ways to raise funds. And I thought that would have been a great way to bring a collection point into Signet, as the next ones are, either the other side of Huonville, or in the far south in Dover. So it would have been, or it could be a potential, collection point in the Signet community that just saves some people a drive, if they feel inclined, to donate their empties. So yeah, thanks for reminding and clarifying. Thanks.
No problems. And we will keep you and the public informed once we receive any new information. So, thank you.
Sorry, back to
No,
the
that's
agenda.
fine. No,
Yep.
that's fine. 14.001/25, the Huon Valley Jobs Hub Authority. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Jessup. Councillor Gibson. No, Councillor Jessup and Councillor Gibson as seconder. Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I haven't really got very much to say about this because, to be quite honest, I haven't really had very much to say about it the whole time.
Yeah.
It's been one of those topics that I'm sure has had advantages, but I haven't seen very many of them. It's been a costly process, and not really much to say about it, to be honest, which is unusual for me.
Thank you. Do I have any other?
I just have one question.
Yep.
When is the grant deed actually wind this up as an operation, not just from council?
I think.
Yeah, soon. There's I wrote this all a little while ago now. I tried to find it, like 26, 27. Yeah, no, there's interest in revising it though. So
Interest in having further extensions.
yes, correct. Yeah, I think it's out to at least 2027. But the state government do want to revise that deed earlier I haven't read this today and got myself organised. I've been worrying about other things. Yeah, it's out till 2027 with security of funding. And this is just an opportunity as they renew that deed to let the authority let it stand alone. It's now built. It's now a built house.
Yeah.
It's now got its radical structures in place, and we can remove it from being a component and ultimately a risk to council. Something we need to worry about.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, the history was that it was originally for 3 years for the existence of the grant. Certainly the single authority was established as the best vehicle for it at the time, but it was always anticipated that there was an opportunity that it could go to a group fully external of the council, and always there was discussion in relation to the opportunity for the state government to extend the grants to allow that to occur. So this is actually seeing that happen in the lifetime of the single authority.
Thank you. And I think that we, should be proud of the work that Huon Valley Council has done to help this authority get to where they are today. Yes, Councillor Jessup and then Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, I am contemplating moving that we defer this motion because I am really concerned about it. And I'm not being cheeky here, but a good audit committee would have reviewed this and told us what our risks were. We had a deed with the government to provide a service. last meeting, we put some pressure on the CEO to say, what were the KPIs? What was the performance? Suddenly we get a request from the organisation, say, oh, we want to look after ourselves. We don't want anybody asking questions about us. There's a comment here that the Jobs Tasmania wishes to vary the grant deed. Where's that? It's not in the minutes, not on the agenda. How do they want to vary it? Do they want to hold us to account? So that worries me. So what did we agree to in 2001 to deliver? What have we delivered? And is there any outstanding liability to the state government for the fact that we held that deed up until now? So the money was given to us, and then we've given it to an authority. It doesn't mean we've given the responsibility for delivering to that authority. We've created a mechanism, and each council has, like I was talking to Sue Hickey about theirs, they've got a very direct control in it. Sorell's a different model. So part of the problem is all of these things are very weird, wonderful models, and some would argue that's a strength of the process, that you can have organic things. But I just feel, I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that we want to move it on. I am a bit concerned that, and I campaigned on this, so it's not just a flash in the pan interest, but I don't think I've seen any significant direct outcomes. I've certainly seen a report that they did that took a long time to come. I finally got a building. They've run some expos, but I can go to the Glenorchy Jobs Hub and say, how many people have you placed with my organisation in the last 3 years? And they can tell me that every time I've rung up and said I need another support worker, they've sent me 5 applications and we've recruited people from that. Now, I know it's a slightly different model, but is that what the deed requires us to do? So I'm just not sure that just because we're saying go away and be your own thing, have we extinguished our obligations to state government for the deed? And I can't see anything in this report, and I'd raise it as a real and apparent financial risk to the organisation if the state government comes back and say, well, what did you do for the $1 million we gave you?
Can I just give you some background in relation to this? The state government did not give just council the total money up front. So the money is provided under the grant deed in a number of instalments. To be able to claim those instalments, the single authority provides necessary reports that then council then, as the originator of the grant, then will upload and provide to Jobs Tasmania. Jobs Tasmania will take an assessment of that information and then will be satisfied as to whether or not to release the instalment. So that is the basis that is being governed.
Doesn't mean the instalment has been completed, so they can sometimes release instalments, but say you've still got X, Y, Z to deliver. I'd like to see a statement from the state government saying, as of this date, you're up to date with what your obligations were, and you can happily send it off into the wild blue wander wherever you are. I feel a bit of draft. I feel a little bit exposed on this.
That won't be a problem to seek that statement.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that we have done everything that we're obliged to do. So, yeah,
Which we don't know what that was, and that's part of my feeling. And it's a big chunk of money. You know, and,
I agree.
yeah, and there's reputational risk here. I don't want the state government to say, oh, well, never give Huon any more money for job stuff because they didn't do anything. So I don't know if maybe the approach is we defer this until we get that. I just want to close it off properly. Well, not properly, but I want to. I'm just anxious.
Is there any, what's the risk of that for the jobs for the company itself, the authority? Do they have to have that done by a certain time?
The ideal time is to have this wound up and complete the transfer by the end of the year. Like do it on the end of the financial year. So it's getting tight, but we would need to,
Go to
I
state.
don't need another board. We don't need another board meeting to get what Councillor Jessop's talking about.
Yep.
I can go directly to
Should we
Jobs Tasmania. Yep, but I mean, I'm basing my advice while we haven't set it out here, and I'll take that on the chin. We have submitted all the reporting, et cetera, that's gone through. That's been a requirement of the grant funding, and indeed the continuation of payments has all been accepted. Myself and the Kingborough CEO have met with Jobs Tasmania directly and questioned the KPIs and expectations of the program when we first became members of this board. There was no indication at that time that we hadn't, and I've certainly expressed, as you're expressing, Councillor Jessop, our keenness for some demonstrated results. But that is not I can assure you that that this is not a response to me pushing for.
Coincidence is a terrible thing.
Yeah, well, yeah. Don't add to the conspiracy theories around here.
Even if maybe an alternate solution would be the South East Training Network Authority, whatever it's called, entering into some sort of deed saying that they'll accept any future liabilities from non-compliance with the grant deed going forward. Now, they might not want to because they're a voluntary organisation. I totally understand that. So I think the better solution would be the state government saying, here is your get out of jail card. Go forth. Because the questions, same as you, I don't know what we've done or not done. Well, I do know what we've done, but I don't know what we're asked to do.
So,
I do accept your ask, but yeah.
I see where you're coming from, and ultimately, councillors need to decide on it. I'm confident that we can get that. But it's just offset against the risk that we then just don't have sufficient time to close it all out and wind it up. But that said, that process can continue anyway, because it should be straightforward to get this from Jobs Tasmania. I don't know if you've got a view on that, Matt, but I think
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I think it can be done with the recommendation or the recommendation that is put forward with the inclusion, perhaps in paragraph B, of a new one along the lines of is to be wound up on completion of the following steps. 1, a statement from Jobs Tasmania that the council's grant obligations have been met and that the grant can be transferred without any future obligations to council. 2, a new body and legal entity are to be established. 3, all grants associated for all assets and authority to transfer. So that's a condition that needs to be ticked off by the CEO, who can report that to you.
that's great.
I think that's a good solution.
all right.
If that's acceptable to the
So
secretary.
the mover and seconder?
Yes,
Yep.
that's.
Yep. You're happy with that? Yep. All right. So we don't need that read again. We know what that was. Okay. All right. Do we have any other, or we'll just take it to the vote?
I did have a question,
Yeah.
which was what would the council's role be after this? Is there any ongoing?
Yeah, look, there's still interest from the board, and because they've appreciated the help from both councils, but Huon Council has taken the lead here. So that is appreciated, not just advice at board level, but the amount of work that goes on in the background, financial statements, etc. Just other administrative support that's been provided over particularly through the establishment phase, and the board, expressed keenness that council still stay involved, and I'm certainly happy to stay on the board and provide oversight, or have other council representatives to be on that board, but it's just no longer an entity of council.
It's just, I'm concerned that without oversight, do we get the value for money that because unemployment's a big issue down here, and and I do understand that this authority has probably one of the hardest jobs of all of them. But yeah, Sorrel does pretty good. Georgetown does a pretty good job as well. Georgetown's went through one of the better performers. So I just hope we don't lose an opportunity by this becoming its own lord and master, because I know the government won't particularly oversight it, or just, yeah, as I said, I don't think the government will particularly oversight it. I don't think they'd so much more than that. But yeah, do we lose an opportunity for a good outcome for the youth and are now employed at the Huon Valley?
Okay.
I'm not sure that we had a good opportunity.
Oh,
to begin
I
with.
agree. Well,
You know, and I don't
agree.
think council should have been anywhere near this to start off with. There's underwhelming information to prove that it's even been particularly beneficial. You know, it's like a lot of things that happens. We get money, but does anything ever happen with that money? You know, like, and we do have similar, like, sort of similar services in the Huon and around. And you know, it was always going to be touted as the Huon Valley Jobs Hub, and then suddenly it became the Huon Kingba or whatever it is Jobs Hub, and then it changed again. And you know, in the few years that it's actually been envisaged, it's changed 3 or 4 times into what it started off going to be to what it is now, and we still don't actually fully know what it is now.
Yep.
So I would be really happy to have somebody else take over. But I'm like you, I don't know how we ensure that they do it.
Well, I think if we can guarantee.
On the board,
Yeah.
you maintain that oversight, and it does, it changes it's a slightly different board relationship when we're not the responsible entity.
Yeah, I don't think we should ever have been the entity, but that's what I said from the beginning, but that was just me.
In the team, the board are really invested in this, and we do have some great people with good business brains from the Huon Valley trying really hard. The staff are excellent as well. It has taken a long time to get going. It does start to be finding its feet, and I do think that I would have preferred to see more of a push from the state government around KPIs and expectations. There's been a lot of rope given, and a directive to do this because it's worked in other areas, but where it's worked in those other areas where it had grown organically and where they just frankly have a population density that's greater than ours, that brings all this together, and a hub makes more sense.
Transport.
Like many things here, a hub doesn't work as well as a hub and spoke model, and that's one of the things that we're grappling with here. So, I don't think it's from lack of trying. It has taken some time, and certainly I feel like in the last year it's come a long way in terms of that governance and setup. It's been okay. We're good now. Go forth and actually do what you need to do to put people into jobs.
Go out into the wild, my friends.
Correct. But I think that change to the recommendation is a good one, and I think we just need to vote on it.
All right. Okay. You're right. You're happy then, Deb? Yep. Well, I'll put the motion that was amended. Yep. Forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. Right. Report number 15.016/25, Audit Panel recommendation. I refer to councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Jessup and councillor Gibson.
I just want to change the wording of the motion, Mayor.
Would like to have.
And I'm happy to, if you want to direct me to move this as a separate amendment, I'm happy to drop my moving. But let me hear me out, and I'm happy to follow your direction. Look, I'm a bit concerned about a couple of things in this motion. I think part C of the motion is irrelevant, that General Counsel can bring us a paper at the next meeting with recommendations. So I don't think we need to be saying they're allowed to. I'm quite happy for that to happen. The reason I'm concerned about that is having a talk to General Counsel today. This is fixing a hole in the legislation. that says if something starts permitted and then turns out to be unpermitted, the legislation is silent on how you do this. So maybe C should end up being a resolution that LGAT takes this to the state government and looks at a legislative amendment to the legislation, or some advice on, is it a good thing to willy-nilly give delegated authority to staff to do things? So, I don't quite like that one. The part A, I'm quite happy with, the report resolution we received. The second thing, I don't quite know what we mean by the word acknowledges the resolution. Does that mean we agree to the resolution? Because if I look at that resolution, it is extending the charter of the panel by stealth. So I would suggest that the council notes the resolution and refers the panel to their charter and roles and limitations contained therein. If the panel wants to move a motion, we'll have a discussion and bring back a recommendation to amend the charter, such as giving them direct reporting responsibility to the minister, which I don't believe they have under either legislation or the charter at this point. I'm happy to deal with that separately, but I don't think we should be sneaking it in by that. So I would sort of think the motion that I was thinking of moving is and let me say, I have no problem with the fact that they've raised this. It's their job and they've done a good job raising it. It's just some of the garnish that they've added around the plate that I'm not liking. So what I was thinking of moving is the report on the resolution made to the council by the audit panel be received and noted. So A stays the same. And then B changes to the council notes the resolution and refers the panel to their charter and roles and limitations contained therein. Leave it at that. So it's up to them if they then want to come back to us. And then C, I don't think we need C, and next meeting we'll get a paper from Mr. Grimsey and we'll have a talk about it, because I think it's coming up with a solution to a problem that might not be the right solution. So I think we need a paper about what the problem is and what some of the possible solutions are, one of which is delegation.
And so the legat component you were talking about before is for the subsequent paper?
Well, that's right. And it may be that we look at that and we go, well, this needs to be dealt with by ministerial change, because I don't know if it's a much bigger problem to solve than us, because I'm sure other councils may have had this problem. So I'm happy not to put that way if people really don't want to do it, and I'll just vote against the motion. But
can I just ask a question? Specifically, what in the audit panel recommendation are you saying is an extension of their charter?
Yeah. I'm more than happy to tell you about that. So the resolution, which is the italicised bits on page 206 and 207 of the meeting. Yeah. So 1 and 2 telling us that in their view, we did the wrong thing. Yeah, I'll wear that on the chin. It's sad that there's nowhere in the paper an acknowledgement that we spent quite a bit of time talking about it and reviewing it, and we didn't childishly make the wrong decision, as might have been implied. Open to the application matter, seek amendment to planning scheme. Yep, I agree with that. I'm not sure. There was a comment somewhere about opening ourselves up to serious and unnecessary risk, including personal liability, which is 5. 5, I think, on the top of.
No, 7.
Oh, the 5 as well. Making such decisions introduces unacceptable unnecessary risks, including potential personal liability for relevant councillors as an offence under the subject penalties. I don't know if that was actually described to us in as much detail. I thought the main issues was we would be open to TASCAT application, and there would be a cost in that. And that I think the other comment, Matt, that you made is that we would be subject to code of conduct potentially. I don't remember being told we were going to be done.
Through you, Mayor, recalling what I would have said to you. 1, there was the potential for the council to be prosecuted for failing to enforce a planning scheme. 2, there could be consequences of code of conduct complaints against the individual councillors. And 3, the TASCAT process was involved with the lack of certainty for the people who have the permit, should there be any future enforcement issues associated with that permit and questions of its validity. That would be the issue that went to TASCAT.
Okay, so I think 5 adds a totally different thing that we weren't advised of, and maybe there's a separate paper, Matt, about what are the range of penalties for us if we do this, and because somebody mentioned democracy earlier. We made a democratic decision to approve that because we felt that the legislative framework was potentially incorrect, and we were willing. Well, 4 of us were willing to say we accept that risk. That's democracy. You can't have your sausage and not eat it too. So 5 is just the one, but the one that I'm most concerned about is 7, which is basically saying us giving the auditor panel permission to report breaches to the authority. So having read the legislation, they have no external reporting authority. And the legislation is actually much more specific than our charter. Legislation said it's largely financial risk, and Section 7 has a series of reports that it should review, and I'm not sure if our actual audit panel has actually reviewed all of those reports, because there's Section 7 of the Act talks about a range of annual report, financial plan, and et cetera. Strategic plan, proposed strategic plan, public inspection of strategic plan. So it needs to check off all of those things. I've never seen in the minutes that it's specifically done that, but that's neither here nor there. But the charter says that they can actually, the charter says, obtain information it needs in connection with the audit panel, okay? Discuss any matters with internal or external auditors or other external parties subject to confidentiality considerations. And that's it, and request the attendance of the Chief Executive Officer. The panel has a transparent way to raise its concerns, which is what we're doing now. It's done its job, it's raised its concerns. It's all public, people are watching us, etc., etc. I don't see anywhere in there that it has the ability to separately report outside of council. And I think, it is not council. It is a subcommittee of this council, and it reports to this council. And it's probably up to the general manager to report us to the minister if he thinks we're doing it wrong. I think actually that's your job, from memory. So it's a bit, those bits are just a bit sloppy. Not sloppy, just extends it beyond what I think is probably right.
And the point of my job is the sticky thing that I've been contemplating ever since that decision was made. So and reinforced by audit panel and the gravity that they've provided to this and their interest in bringing it forward in their review to highlight those risks, to make sure those risks are completely clear. But it leaves us in an interesting position where, and despite it was acknowledged on the night that all of us felt the technicality of the legislation involved and the intent that the application had, council staff, administration, management, whatever you want to call us, and councillors were all in step that it was a sensible outcome to have this. But
an illegal one, and I do
illegal
get
one, and that's where it's that knowingly, and we don't often have situations where we are not following the qualified advice, and that does give me significant pause because I do have obligations.
And you should seek, I think, you should legitimately seek advice on that, and maybe with the second paper next week, come back to what our legal, we've got an hour's free legal advice a month. So, so the purpose of my motion, Mayor, is really to say, yes, we do acknowledge what the audit panel has raised. I absolutely have no problem with that, and they've done their job. But then rather than giving them a whole range of extra fluff in their resolution, which we would be acknowledging, does that mean agreeing to? I don't know. So rather than that, I'm suggesting that if they really feel strongly enough that they want to change their charter, this is opening the door to them to say, make some amendments and yeah, I think that's a fair discussion. If they feel strongly enough that their hands are so limited, I note, and this is no comment on you or Paddy or whoever else was there, but I note, Matt and legal counsel were both crook on the day, so maybe the discussion would have taken a different angle if there was different advice as well, sort of thing.
Okay, so Matthew, have you got that?
Yes, through you, Mayor. So A is the same. B would become the council notes a resolution of the audit panel and refers the panel to their charter and the roles and limitations contained therein. And C would disappear.
And not saying that C won't reappear at the next meeting and we'll have a separate.
So we don't need to ask for permission to provide that paper.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah.
Just through you, Mayor, the purpose of including that in the recommendation was to say from the council message back to the audit panel, here's what we are doing to deal with it. So that was the purpose. It wasn't necessarily to give us permission in that sense. This is your response to the audit panel.
So it's presuming that it sort of presumes that we're going to agree with it and give, So and I'm happy if C says something like, and in the May meeting considers the matter as a separate paper or something like that. No problem with that.
And can report back to the audit panel that we will consider it as a separate paper.
Yeah, I'm happy with C that says something in response to the resolution. The audit panel, council will consider a report in its May 2005 council meeting on possible, on future solutions to this eventuality or something like that.
Okay.
Because I'd hate to fetter our discussion about this at the next meeting.
All right, so we'll just wait until you've got that. Okay, so do you want to read that one just so that we're clear? C?
Through you, Mayor, C would be simply in response to the resolution of the audit panel, the council will consider a report at its May 2025 council meeting on future solutions to this eventuality. Can we just have to this matter? Issue.
Yep, Mayor, yep. So if, Mayor, you're happy that I move that motion, I'll now talk to it. But I will briefly talk to it.
But we've got to have a second.
Second, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, you're happy with that? Okay.
Look, I have no problem that the panel has raised the risk because it is a financial risk potentially as much as a reputational risk and stuff. And I do thank them for that. I suppose I note that there was considerable debate and we didn't do it unwittingly, I suppose is the important thing. And sometimes in planning, many of our ratepayers are impacted by the vagaries of planning legislation and the difficulties for planning legislation. And I think sometimes when legislation is wrong, it's not a bad thing to make a stand. Okay, now with risks associated, and I know we're gambling with ratepayers' money and all that sort of stuff, I get that. But we also weighed up what was the likelihood of the risk, who was going to go to Tascat over this and things like that. Maybe there were other risks like what if the building falls down 100 years, are we liable that we didn't explore fully? And this report has made me contemplate some of those risks. But I just wanted to thank them for that, and it is important, and I think it raises, they went a bit further to just saying that, and hence my change to the motion is just to treat those things as separate issues. Let's not just try to do an omnibus sort of outcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you. Do we have any other? No?
Yeah. I mean, the other risk that I don't like is that we should be taking this, basically, once this is being used as visitor accommodation, we as a council should be telling them not to do it because it's not compliant. and there's associated fines and risks for not doing that on an ongoing basis, which is I find a bit nerve-wracking. But anyway, I mean the planning scheme, I'm very critical of it, but it's a set of rules and everybody's got to stick by it, and I think it's better to just stick to the rules in future.
Yes. Sorry. Through you, Mayor. I get a bit of what everybody's saying and I kind of agree with elements of all of it. But this one was different to any that we've had before, and we'll probably never have another one like this for a long time. And when we look at how many visitor accommodations we've got that haven't come through council and haven't put in any development applications or permittable uses or anything else, at least they did put in a development application. And I get that we made the wrong decision,
No, illegal decision.
illegal decision, legislatively illegal decision. But it's all about the wording, isn't it? Like to say that you're in a low coastal erosion zone, and clearly that's not what the support documents say, but there is no avenue within the legislation to give us an outlet to actually process that. So then why does that person have to go and spend? Yes, I know, but I'm getting to this. But then why does that person have to go and spend $25,000 when she's perched on the top of a hill on bedrock and dolomite, not in the low? You know, so where is the wording that allows councillors to find us an acceptable solution to that problem? You know, I'm not comfortable saying, no, you can't do that, because clearly she's not in the zoning. I would rather take the risk every time. I know it's not being disrespectful to you guys at all, but I would rather take the risk and hope that it puts pressure on the appropriate bodies and that they start to amend wording to get it right, because this is going to pop up occasionally throughout. You know, had there been absolute definite maybes, could be's, would be's, perhaps there will, but she's not going anywhere. You know, she's not going to get washed away when the tide hits the beach. So I know, and I was, the problem is we did do the wrong thing. We did the wrong thing based on what we had, which actually seemed like the right thing given the documentation that we had. So I'm going to be a bit naughty, and I would do it again if I had to. Sorry, but I would, because it just was not, you can't expect people to find $25,000 when they've done the right thing and they don't meet the legislation.
And I know, Amy, but just on that, I think the issue also is we saw exactly the same thing with the vegetation overlays. That you had threatened species overlays over paddocks that have been paddocks for 100 years. So what liability do we have as a council to make sure that the overlays and ultimately do we administer? I think we sort of administer the overlays. Yeah, what obligation do we have that they're right and that we don't force citizens to go down a planning approval for an overlay that maybe has just been a large drawing around a area. So that was one of my thoughts as well. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Robertson.
I'm going to get technical, and I've got a few points. Bear with me because I'm going to try and get to the points. So, yeah, loop is complex, and sometimes decision makers do get it wrong. We saw that this week. We saw that in a decision made by councillors of this council, I think late the year before last, where councillors approved a permit which was taken to TASCAT and was then denied or revoked. So sometimes people do get it wrong, even with the advice of staff. Now, I'm trying not to take this personally because the report to the audit panel identified this February decision, but if you recall in January, this council made two quite contentious decisions, which surely would equally be worthy of inclusion in this audit panel report. So there was the decision on the rural zone subdivision against staff recommendation, and that was on a performance criteria of the zone rather than a performance criteria of the code. So I'd argue that's actually technically a little more significant than the Surveyors Bay decision. Also, there was the illuminated sign decision, and there was substantial, I put forward a substantial change to the rationale, but it still was decided in alignment with the officer's recommendation. So that is democracy in action, and we're thinking about this stuff and we're working on it. I personally think that's pretty brilliant. But anyway, and I was going to say that I've had more than 5 years of decision-making experience under the state's resource management and planning systems. And then I realised it's actually nearly 20, or it might be 20 now. I can't count. So there's a fair bit of experience there. And I'd actually contend I don't believe that decision was illegal or wrong. And I'll go through some points there. Noting that
just remember that we do have a time.
Noting that the full discussion probably needs to happen offline. Yep. So I've questioned the accuracy of the report given to the audit panel, and there's some terms in there in terms of prohibition, unlawful, that I'm not sure are actually objective in this situation. And I do intend to go to the next audit panel meeting and have a discussion there. And I'd appreciate the opportunity out of the meeting to do the technicalities, to go through those technicalities.
I think you can observe. Can you?
Yeah, I think all of us
Invitation
can.
of the chair.
Yes, that's right. Has to be invitation. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'd note that an application under the planning, or for a development application, is an application. The category of the application, whether it's permitted, discretionary, prohibited, is subsequent to it being an application. Anyone can apply. You can actually apply for a prohibited use under the planning scheme. There's some situations where council can approve a prohibited use. If you've got a historic building and approving a use that would be prohibited in that zone but furthers the restoration of that historic listed building or site, like that you can break the rules. There's also the parts of the planning scheme that tell you how to go through the process, and I've raised a couple of those. So 5.6.4, which is may consider the relevant objective in an applicable standard. Now, we may consider it or we may not. We may say, oh, no, I'm not going to pay attention to that. But part 6 of the planning scheme tells us how to assess an application, and that says that in determining the application for a discretionary proposal, which is what this one was, visitor accommodation in low density residential is discretionary, we must have regard to the zone purpose and the code purpose. There's no negotiation on that. We have to consider what's the purpose of that coastal erosion code, what's the purpose of the low density res.
So what you come up with though is your must-have is what you come up with.
Well, each of us, and this is where I was going to wrap it up, was that we are each decision makers, and we do need to be very careful. We have a responsibility under our laws, regulations, and our guidance, but we also have a duty to think fully through those decisions, and we do need to be careful that we're not fearful that duty isn't fettered by an arbitrary rule of not going against staff advice.
Yeah, but there's never been any time where we've said you have to. It's always been up to the individual to make up their mind.
It's pretty
But we do.
reading when you read an audit panel report saying that this is unlawful and prosecution may be undertaken.
But that can happen though.
We'll ring the minister and tell them.
Yep, him, be it. Pardon?
Through you, Mayor, I am happy to respond to that. Just on the first point, this decision was brought to the audit panel as being inconsistent because it was made unlawfully contrary to the planning scheme. The two other decisions were made by the councillors exercising a discretion that you had a clear discretion to do so. Had the illuminated sign gone to an approval from a refusal, that would have also been put to the audit panel as a matter of a decision which created risk to the council in relation to appeals and that process. In relation to prohibited use rights, the planning scheme has specific provisions in how you can approve matters which are existing non-conforming uses and how you can approve those in the scheme. That makes it lawful. It is not prohibited under the scheme on that basis. In relation to this particular matter, the matters that you've referred to that are taken into account can only be taken into account when you are exercising a discretion. What this assessment of this development application found was that the performance criteria in 10.5.3 could not be met because to be able to be met, the use must be for a use which relies upon a coastal location. The scheme in that code clearly says that for the purpose of that clause, 10.5.1, visitor accommodation is not a use class that is reliant upon a coastal location. That performance criteria could not be met. Therefore, anything considerations of objective purpose could not be considered. The discretion could not be exercised.
So you just said it couldn't be met, so therefore it was automatically cancelled out. So why did it come to council?
Yes. So we'll go through the process of how that occurred.
Which is what Part C of this recommendation is about. Yeah.
Yes, because that was the difficulty that you have with this process. As Councillor Robertson has said, you have an application made to you. The application at first instance is permitted. If you follow through the scheme provisions, that would mean that you have to grant a permit if it meets every single acceptable solution within a zone and a code. Because a code applied, there was no acceptable solution for it, the application became discretionary. So on the assessment, it became discretionary on that provision in the code that I just read out to you. And because it is not a use that relies upon the coastal location, could not be assessed under that discretion. It could not meet a performance criteria, therefore became prohibited. The issue is that if we would have picked that up before it went to advertising, we could have dealt with that under existing delegation under section 57(2) of the Land Use Planning Approvals Act. Post-advertising, there is no delegation which allows a refusal in those circumstances where we have completed the assessment and determined that it cannot be approved. So that is the reason why it came to council.
That's the legislation failing.
That is the bit which is missing in the legislation and clarity, and that is the bit which was missing and why the issue of delegation was addressed.
Interesting.
Look, it'd be interesting. I don't know if we have a workshop where we've got to spare 15 minutes, but it would be interesting to get the planning department, planning commission's take on this to some extent informally, to say that, well, what do you do when you do find, you know, from our council point of view, because everybody's saying it was the right outcome, and I do understand that had the applicant said they were keeping one room for residential purposes, it would have maybe been permitted, and I believe that was communicated to staff during the debate, that had that changed, it would have totally sidestepped. So there's many ways to, I was going to use an appropriate term about cats, but there's many ways to come up with a solution, and I'd be interested if we had a chance just to get even John Ramsey or somebody, because he loves coming down to Huon from his past experience, But yeah, get someone like him to come in and say, well, you know, yeah, you were dumb, but you were probably acceptably dumb, or you were dumb and you were really dumb. Yeah, but I'll leave it up to the Mayor and.
I think certainly well, we've still got, dissent and differing opinions, and we're back to, I don't want to be debating that back to a planning application that we've already decided upon. But clearly we need to spend more time workshopping this stuff. That's completely appropriate. Lupa is complex, and all councils agree Lupa is not an ideal piece of legislation. There's lots of issues, and as we know, we've got a whole bunch of recommendations to the SPP to make Lupa more workable in our municipality, and we're excited to see those things start coming through. We have got advice from the SPO, from the State Planning Office, on this particular one, and we provided that when this was assessed. So that was part of the qualified advice that was provided.
But not the advice on going against it. So I'd be interested to get their take on how naughty were we. It'd be an interesting academic discussion. Oh, I don't know if we know.
I'm not sure if there's shades of naughty. It's lawful or it's unlawful. Is the issue that you've got, and as they were very clear in saying that, particularly where there's an alternative pathway, albeit a costly one, there is an alternative pathway here. So I think that, yeah, we need to workshop it in more detail and have those technical arguments and bring in other experts. Happy to invite whoever we think and whoever we can listen to and accept their advice, so that we can be a better functioning planning authority. As the question was asked earlier,
Could I just say one more thing? Yeah. And also I think when we start having applicants filling out the paperwork, perhaps we need to ask more questions, which we've also said about before. Is it going to be full-time accommodation? Is that going to be a primary business? Because sometimes it isn't and sometimes it is. Sometimes people are pushing through, I know it's a shade of grey. And sometimes people are honest.
Yeah, but they change too.
They do change, but sometimes people don't actually understand the difference between visitor accommodation and visitor accommodation that is just part-time. Like there's this as well. Like if someone wants to rent or lease for 6 weeks or 6 months, but then they want to live in it for 2 months over summer, it does it's a different thing, isn't it?
It 100% is, and where we're walking a really fine line here, and Lyle's probably better qualified to talk about it, Director Brown, but is that we asked those kind of questions, and it's usually not well received. Because people say
understand the difference.
Exactly right, and so it's the amount of context and time you need to provide, and it would be amazing to be able to do that, to hold everybody's hand and say, look, the reason we're asking you these questions that go to intensification and go to how you intend to use this have a direct bearing on how we're going to assess this, but it is our experience is that it's a lot of work and it's well beyond the resources that we have available to us. And the questioning, the RFIs are generally not well received. They're just seen as a barrier to just get my DA done. Let's get moving.
Why would they be not well received? They're two simple questions. Are you
No,
going
not,
to?
because it's seen as it's delaying the process.
Yeah.
Putting that day, request for information is almost.
But also, we are questioned all the time about how long it takes us to get through all
And
our.
it's not saying we can't, and to Councillor Jessup's point, it's how we deliver it, and we have made changes to how we deliver that, and we're continuing to improve in that space, and we're getting good feedback on those changes we've made. But, so that's great that you guys have heard that and seen that. But there's still, it's given the gap between the complexity of the scheme and why we might ask a question that seems to have for someone that's dealing with Lupa once in a lifetime potentially, they build their house and then they're done, versus us who see these consequences and why these questions are so relevant. There's a yawning gap there, and it's a real challenge to bridge.
So many of these problems.
100%, but it's resources.
So is there a guideline form that you can give them explaining the difference that they can read then? I know I'm pushing the point, but it's such it's a simple fix to a humongous problem.
I think if there was a simple fix,
Yeah,
there'd be
it
some
would be
council
done.
out there that would have no problems, and their DA department would be, their planning department
Or
would be.
is there a list of people that you can send them to? Like, if you said to them, you can be approved if you were this usage, you can't be approved if you were that usage, would that make them see things more differently?
Yeah.
Just in terms of that, to respond to that, we do often give them that advice. So currently we have what we're calling a duty planner that is providing that advice at the front end going, and it's not just use, it can be where you site your dwelling in terms of the setback. If you site it here, it'll be a permitted application. If you encroach into the setback, it's discretionary. We give that advice at the front end. But to the CEO's point, the RFI thing is a contentious issue. The majority of the complaints I deal with are around RFIs, and it's always a balance for us. In asking for information, we often get a one-liner response back, and then we're constantly trying to ask for information. Yes, we've made changes, so we pick up the phone and we explain and we try but also we're dealing with quite a lot of applications in the general volume. So it is a tricky thing that we are trying to address, and we do have a group of planners that talk to each other across the state, and these are the things we're grappling with and the solutions we're looking for in that space.
So didn't we have a designated staff member that was going to be vetting, for want of a better word?
That's what we're saying.
The restructure, is this what you're using?
Yeah, it's not, yeah, so we do have someone, we do have a position there, it's the technical officer that is working in that space. So yeah, and we're getting good feedback on that, because it is providing people with clear advice on sort of their options. And sometimes that advice is maybe not what they want to hear, but at least they're hearing it at the front end.
I think if we're just really blunt with, you can use it if you're going to do this, you're not going to use it if you can't do that, then that would probably make them think twice. Instead of delivering it in a nice, polite council manner, where it's not clear either way, because I know that council has to deliver things in a nice, polite manner, but sometimes you need to be a bit abrasive with yes, you can, or no, you can't, and just make it straight
We
down.
don't necessarily need to be abrasive. We give yes/no answers if we've got the full information provided to us, and that's the balance. So look, it's a space we continue to work in, a space we have improved in, but it's pretty tough. It
So-
really is.
At the moment, we have the motion is as,
I hear that.
What about the motion?
Through you, Mayor, that A, the report and resolution made to the council by the audit panel be received and noted. B, the council notes the resolution of the audit panel and refers the panel to their charter and the roles and limitations contained therein. C, in response to the resolution of the audit panel, the council will consider a report at its May 2025 council meeting on future solutions to this issue.
okay. So to that, then, I think we now,
Sorry, just read B again. I didn't realise that was so radically changed.
The council notes the resolution of the audit panel and refers the panel to their charter and the roles and limitations contained therein.
and the reason for that was so that they could come,
Rather than sort of weeding in some change like external reporting authority and things like that, it's basically saying, if you want to change your charter, make a recommendation to us and we'll review it. Because they do not have an external reporting authority in my
But they didn't have anything to do with external.
No, it basically just says we acknowledge your recommendation, and if you look at the 7 recommendations, it includes basically taking permission to report externally.
Yeah, I'm not actually, as a seconder, I'm not happy with the wording of B.
okay, so now we need a new seconder, if
Or
you,
make an amendment.
I'll second.
okay, is that, okay? So we have councillor Robinson with the motion of the keeping of A, changing of B and changing of C. All right? So then we take that to the vote? Yep. All right,
Can I just foreshadow a change back to B? I accept the noting rather than acknowledging, but I still think that I'd like to leave it with including the concerns and risks raised within. So just the single word change there rather than sort of getting into the weeds with
So say that again, you want the council,
notes the resolution, including its concerns. Concerns are raised.
right, okay, so I have to get a seconder?
No, that's just
No?
foreshadow.
Oh, that's such foreshadow, okay, all right.
Just in closing there, if you want me to close. Yep. Look, it's, the issues for me are that I think the audit panel has done its job in raising the issues. And as we've seen here, yet generated further respectful and insightful discussion, which I remember we had at the last meeting. I think it's very important that we have those discussions publicly, where the cameras can see us, where the public can hear us, not necessarily try to encourage discussions to be in closed subcommittees of the panel, of the council. And then again, just to reinforce the change in B, the invitation is there for the audit panel if they feel they need more power to externally report, not to report to council, which are a subcommittee of the council. I've given them a wide door to have that discussion and come back with a recommendation. I'm not sure when we review the charter again next, Matt. I think we reviewed it not that long ago, so it would be 18 months anyway, but we could give them leave to review it out of session anyway. But thank you for the discussion, and thank the audit panel too for their raising it, because I think it's healthy for us to discuss it.
Right, well, I'll put then to the vote the motion that was put forward by Councillor Jessup and seconded by Councillor Robertson. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Hang on. This is the original one, the poll unseconded.
That's the one with the changes to A. A stay the same. B, change the
And C
wording,
was-
and C, no, C got changed. To,
C removed.
No, C.
C was changed.
B was changed to the council
Yep.
notes a resolution of the audit panel and refers the panel to their charter and the roles and limitations contained therein.
Yes.
Discussion just there. C, in response to the resolution of the audit panel, the council will consider a report at its May 2025 council meeting on future solutions to this issue.
Yep, cool. And yeah, let's go back to that again.
All right, so we've got A, B and C. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Thank you.
That's Councillor Robertson, Jessup, Armstrong and Burgess. And against is Rosak, O'Neill, Gibson, Doyle and Thorpe, which means that we go to the...
It declared the motion lost.
Yes, declare the motion lost and go to the...
Councillor Gibson has foreshadowed
Yep.
a motion.
Which is exactly the same, except B, it reads the council notes the resolution of the audit panel, including the concerns and risks rated within.
Right, so A and C stay the same as what the, as the changes were. And B as, yeah, do we have a seconder? We need a seconder for that? Yep, Councillor Thorpe. Okay, and then we go to the vote. Do you,
Point of clarification there.
yep,
Does that mean that by agreeing to that, we have now changed the charter and we now give the audit panel future powers to report on the council outside of council?
We just noted it.
no,
So what does noting mean? Does noting mean, because we need to give them a clear message that they do or don't have that power.
okay.
Do
Do you want to?
Through you, Mayor, it certainly doesn't, it's not an amendment to the charter in any sense. What we would also do is, irrespective of what this resolution is, note that this was a matter of discussion for the councillors.
I mean, we could. Oh, no, it's too.
Yep, no, so at the moment, no, it does, yeah, no. All right, okay, is that,
I think this could, that the motion as it stands could be construed by the audit panel to give them powers beyond their charter. which if they acted on that, they would then be subject to their own disciplinary action and code of conducts.
All right, so we are making note of that. Thank you. All right, do you wish to,
No, I think we've discussed this a fair bit.
all right, well, I'll put that shadow motion forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's Rozak, O'Neill, Gibson, Doyle and Thorpe. And those against is Armstrong, Jessup, Robertson and Burgess. And so that has been, the motion has been carried. All right, you right with that? And councillor Jessup's concerns have been noted. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay. Report number 15.017/25, lease of public land, Dover Community Workshop. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Thorpe and a seconder, Councillor Burgess. Do you wish to speak to this one? Do I have any other discussion on this one? No? Yep.
Question. So I'm assuming the change on page, whatever it is of the agenda, showing where they're going to build a concrete slab and bits and pieces, is that subject to planning permissions or, so are we giving them permission to do that now or not? Because they've just given us a picture with all that stuff in there, so.
Can I pass that through to?
Through you, Mayor, this is not giving the planning permission, so that will, if that's a separate.
Yeah, cool.
So if it's deemed that in that location, that they need a planning assessment, they'll need to go through that process.
And they shouldn't do it, I don't think that's.
If it's seen from the road, there's a couple of complexities that may mean it may not be. We'll just go through the lawful motions.
Councillor Thorpe, do you wish to close on this one? Okay, well, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors bar Councillor Robertson who left the room. Thank you. Report number 16.005/25, financial report March 2025. I refer to councillors for recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Gibson and a seconder, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Gibson?
I thought everything looked pretty good there. I did have a question about the FAGs, the federal assistance grants.
Yep.
Just through you, Mayor, whether there are additional allocations or is it just there was a note, yeah, just the 198,979 or whatever of federal assistance grants. Just outline whether there's any increase in those or just a redistribution.
Want me to go through?
Yes, through you, Mayor. When we set the budget, we're unsure exactly how much funding we're going to receive. And we get that, as you say, a distribution across councils as to what we get after the fact. So that's why there's an adjustment that comes through. We normally don't find that out till about September, October of the following financial year. So that's why there's a bit of an adjustment.
And that's favourable in this case.
Yes,
Yeah.
mostly it is. Mostly it is. There is some discussion around changes to allocations around financial assistance grants, but at this stage we're not quite sure what that looks like for us, but we are keeping a watching brief on that.
I know it was a hot topic of conversation at the ALGA conference.
Yeah.
Just wondered whether that it is in general increasing, but that's not the case. This is just a standard adjustment for the year.
Well, it has been in the past, as I said, slight increase because it depends on how much funding we get from the federal government. And then there's a distribution rule by the State Grants Commission. And it's slightly changed from last year to the next. I think we're just not sure where that's going to head moving forward. So as I said, we do meet with them annually. We met with them about, I think it was about 6 weeks ago, and for us, for where we're seeing at this point in time, we don't see a material movement in the financial assistance grants. But again, federal election coming up, we really unsure as to what that may look like moving forward.
If we get a big increase, you'll hear me when I get the email. All right. Okay. Do we have any other? Yes?
Yeah, just a quick one. Sorry, Patty, for asking you a difficult questions. Summary year-to-date capital works progress page by category. So just reading this, we've ignoring the new stuff, but just looking at renewal, for example, we've committed 17 million, we've spent 11, we're committed 1.5, and then so the 7.5 million is our new expenditure this year, I take it? So then there's the 5.2 million remaining funds. That's a forward estimates or something, is it? That's not what we're spending this year, but that's what we're planning on spending?
Part of that could be what we expend coming up to 30th of June, but normally it's the life of the project. So therefore it's keeping our reserves, and that's
committed projects.
That's correct.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do I have any others? Okay, no problems. Well, do you want to, is there anything for closing? No, okay. Well, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. 16.006/25, excuse me. Strategic rates review outcome. Do I have a councillor to give the recommendation of this report? Yes, Councillor Armstrong. And a seconder? Councillor O'Neill. Thank you very much. Do you wish to comment on this one?
Not particularly, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Do I have any other? Yes. Councillor Robertson?
Thanks. I appreciate the report. It spells out a bit more detail in the rationale and points considered by council in setting those rates. So that's, I think, really important in trying to be transparent and help our community understand the basis for what we're charging those rates. Part of the reason I asked for the report was to address some of the hypotheses or some of the thinking that we've been doing in workshop. And credit to Councillor Burgess, who had asked a thoughtful question on why the difference between the general rate and the commercial and industrial categories. And I felt the report didn't fully explore that question, which I think would be useful. It is an issue of importance to people who are paying the higher rate of a commercial or industrial property, and that's not the zoning, it's a rating category that's applied to those properties by council. So, and the commercial rate is about 1.28 times or 28% higher than the general rate. The industrial rate at the moment is 1.36, so 36% higher. And when I was thinking about the question and why they ought to be higher or not, the thing that occurred to me was that those owners of commercial or industrial properties were presumably more likely to be carrying on a business and able to tax deduct their rate payments and save 30% at the company tax rate on that. So theoretically, they may end up paying or costing similar to the general rate amount. But that's where I felt like, should they be similar? Should they be the same? we're tweaking around with the eighth, up to the eighth decimal place of $1 in the rate. We're maybe splitting hairs, but the rationale is interesting to me, and it's a consideration we should be thinking about when we deliberately ask people to pay council money.
So what do you want to do then?
There was some explanation given about adjusting those amounts. So they'd been set some years ago, and then there was an adjustment made to keep the size of those portions of the overall rate payment the same. And I felt that explanation didn't come out in the report. Maybe I've got lost.
Right, so
Could that be further documented and added
for the purpose of,
information
Yeah.
to our community?
right,
And just so that
So
what it
not
does is it empowers us. It's written down somewhere.
Yeah.
And when we get asked in the street, oh, why are my rates higher when I own a commercial property?
Yeah.
It gives us somewhere to go back to say, oh, we talked about that in April last year.
Yeah.
Here's the reference. You can go back and read that.
how does that change the what do you want to do with the recommendation of this? What the purpose of?
I'm not sure. Could it? Maybe I should have asked that as a separate question.
Through you,
Yeah.
Mayor, just conferring with the director, just like an option is to ask that particular one as a question on notice for next month so that we
Yeah.
can spell it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
that's-
Because I'm just wondering because I couldn't figure out what to do with that within the recommendation, so.
Yep.
All right?
Yep.
Okay,
Sounds good.
all right. So, back to anyone else that has,
Through you, Mayor, I'd just like to thank the staff for really considering this carefully and the workshops that they gave, which it's not an easy thing to sort of work out how to do this. It's not an easy thing to change.
no, it's not.
And that's what we sort of
Yep.
realised when you actually dig into it.
Yeah.
So, that's all really.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other questions on this? Councillor Armstrong, you happy to, not have a closing, or you want something else to say? Or?
I just think I'd like people to know that when we talk about rates and costings to community, it's never a very pleasant conversation to have, because we're all very aware of how things are, and it's tight. For some people, we do try and keep things as low as we can, but there is always going to be a flip side to that, where there's something else that's going to have to, move into that space where we're not putting rates up. But when we do talk about community and rates and services, we always try and do the best thing. So be kind to us if something else happens to come up. But no, I think it's a headache for the staff, and I agree with. I think they do a good job.
Thank you.
Nothing else.
All right, thank you. Well, if that's the case, we've concluded that Councillor Robinson will ask her question, and so we're back to the recommendation. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. And the motion is carried. We're up to 18, are we? Report number 18.005/25, NRM Environment Grant Allocations 2025. I'll refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Okay, so I think it was Councillor O'Neill, and I'll go Councillor Rosette. Councillor O'Neill.
It's all pretty fair to me. It's not a huge amounts involved there, but all for a good cause.
Yes, Councillor Robertson, she put her hand up as well first, yes?
Sorry, I was a little slow off the mark there, and I was going to propose an amendment to this motion, adding an additional point. So I was concerned the Upper Crabtree Foxglove control. that's evidently been a longer process. It's or a more ongoing process. And I'm always concerned, so these are one-off grants. So if that's had grants before and we're throwing some more money at it, the question is, how can we be assured that we're not going to need to do this again in another few years? So what's the, and from a governance point of view, that's always better when you have a plan. Even if you end up going outside the plan and things go wrong and you have to adapt that plan or find a backup, it's still better to have a plan in the first place. And one of the comments on the assessment was that there isn't a plan at the moment. I'd like to add a comment, I think it's under B, for the grant amount, $4,000. The grant is on condition that a long-term weed management plan is developed for the project area to be administered through a grant provision condition and in consultation with council's NRM unit. So that makes it compulsory to have a plan. And I think from a governance point of view, in a longer term project, it's a difficult challenge. Foxgloves are quite toxic. My understanding is that the chemicals used are off-label. So there's challenges, but having a plan and mandating that should help ensure better outcomes from this grant, which is a fairly substantial amount of money.
Okay, so I can go back to seeing that's it. Does that have to change totally, or can we ask
You can ask the mover and the seconder.
whether they,
Yeah, look, I can see what you're saying, but if you put that plan in place, does that mean the landholder is responsible for X amount of years and a lot of investment without? It's sort of it's a grey area, or are we sort of required to keep supporting that landowner with grants? So I can see what you're saying, but if you put that in place, it's a bit unclear who's responsible. Is it us or the landowner? And if it's a landowner and it's a massive job, it's a bit unfair as well.
so the seconder, what's your, yep, do we?
Just you do that.
Can I just clarify? So just to clarify, that it is not no plan. There are plans. So each time they apply for a grant, and to your point, Councillor, they have a plan for that particular grant and how they're going to execute that particular grant amount. Understanding that, unfortunately, and in best case scenario, the funding for weed management should be ongoing and sustained, because just like I said, this particular weed at seed is viable for up to 68 years, according to the advice that the state government has given us in determining it to be a declared weed. So it needs ongoing maintenance and follow-up treatment. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So that's why they are seeking funding from different sources. And that's why their management plans are limited to that particular grant, because they don't have that longer term funding in place that they can then forecast further into the distance. Notwithstanding, we are seeing that this project is picking up momentum and that they are adding more properties, and that is why the comment was made that a longer term plan actually makes sense in this case, because we're now starting to see it growing and landowners are seeing the benefit and joining onto this project, and it's gaining momentum and size. And that's why we think actually it is identified as an area that is a higher priority in terms of managing Foxglove. So there's a interest from us to see this and support a longer term vision for this project.
And just, I mean, I'm reading the amendment, so on that, so the other component is the consultation with Council's NRM unit is the kicker at the end of that. So that consultation can't and won't commit us to any guaranteed ongoing funding and whatever else. That if that was to happen, it would need to come back to council. So they'll very carefully make sure that we don't overcommit ourselves, and that there's a plan that is reasonable. But that may well, given what the directors just said, because there is no surety of ongoing funding at a state level for this stuff, it may well be that the landowner needs to continue to fund fund that or continue to seek external funding,
Yeah.
or continue to come through us through a grant process. But for us, it couldn't be a guaranteed
No,
process under
I
our
agree,
current
it shouldn't be,
resource
I
constraints.
agree it should be a guarantee.
Yeah.
But then, is it also fair on the landowner to put them on a huge amount of commitment for perhaps a small part of the problem, but putting the responsibility on them? Are they financially, I don't know who they are.
Well, to be determined by them when they put together this
Yeah,
plan.
so I suppose that they can reject it.
Yeah.
I have a question.
So Councillor Robinson has been waiting for a second, I think, to comment on this. If you want.
Just in response to Councillor O'Neill, the flip side to that is that if you don't have a plan, then from a governance point of view, handing out $4,000 to a community with no guarantees is pretty poor governance. And I'd note that those landowners, this is now a declared weed, so those landowners now have a responsibility to eradicate it anyway. So
They have a responsibility, but if they haven't got the finances to do it, it's
Yeah.
pointless.
But if we're going to use our community's money
Yep.
for these private properties, we want some quality assurance, which comes through the planning and integration.
The benefit of a longer term plan, sorry, through you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Benefit of a longer term plan is it does allow them to then access, they can say to funders, potential funders or grant funders, that this is our long term plan.
Yeah.
You'll be funding this particular component of that long term plan. So that
So
is the
we'll
benefit.
go to them and ask them for a long-term plan, and they have the ability to pull out of the agreement. So I accept the.
Yes, yes, councillor.
I just have a question noting that there's actually 4 applicants here. Is the requirement to have is this the second large application, the road? It's not I don't know much about this at all, but the riparian restoration, were you imposing that they don't need a plan?
No, I've had no question.
Because I'd really like to understand the fixation on having a plan for one applicant, but not all of them, because I don't think that's good governance either.
Good point.
But also, they might not need a plan, because I actually don't know about terrestrial fauna.
My sense was, my sense in not pursuing that for that applicant was I hadn't seen that there were grant requests in the past, so it wasn't such an ongoing process. And riparian restoration is a pretty well understood field. So where foxgloves there's some new challenges there.
But it does imply that there's an ongoing project here, because it notes that it's approximately only a third of the total project that this is contributing to.
Can anyone explain, please, what that actually means? Not what that actually means, what a riparian restoration entails. Because I also don't actually understand the wording of that.
Riparian is
I know the water, yeah, but what does
so
it-
the river zone.
Yes, but how would you restore one of those for $4,000?
Essentially planting trees, maybe shrubs as well. So it's really valuable in terms of stabilising that landform that's quite vulnerable to erosion, and that's really valuable from an ecological point of view.
So in justification, then, is that, you're saying that councillor thought that if
Like
we
if we're
had a plan
proposing,
for one,
Councillor Robinson's through you, Mayor. Councillor Robinson's point is valid. There are some very clear guidance manuals and standard operating procedures when it comes to revegetation or riparian zones post willow control. So I would say that, and certainly we can, if we want to, we can put that condition there. I would say I wouldn't call it a long-term plan. I would just say a sort of ongoing maintenance plan for that one, because that's a revegetation plan. But I would also say that I think there's enough manuals out there that they can just follow those guidance manuals that have been developed.
And that's exactly it. The wording just threw me off. But when you explain it, it's just like a redo what was already there, and it's done and it just grows.
They've removed the willows. They're now going to revegetate. The intent is to create a canopy cover so that it limits the re-establishment of all those.
yes, you've got one other.
so I'm asking another really silly question. A riparian zones or whatever, is that implying that a riparian, how do you pronounce it? But
Riparian, you spot it.
is a natural river?
Yep.
When this says that it's a network of man-made ponds.
That's a different one.
No, that's a
that
different
was
application.
rejected, that one.
Oh, that's rejected.
But yeah, riparian areas, the river banks, it's sort of the zone around a river that is vegetated.
So we think there's reasonable justification that there would be that we only need a management plan for the first one, not all of them?
Yeah, I think to Councillor Robertson's point, I think foxglove control is tricky, and that's acknowledged in that advice that was given by the state. So, and I do think a long-term management plan, as the panel agreed with, is warranted in this case, given the project's sort of direction and expansion.
Okay, so back to where we were,
Yeah, okay,
do
look.
the mover and seconder.
Yep, I'm happy to take the change. Just as long as I'm clear that the landowner is made clear of these responsibilities before the given the money, and they have the ability to say, well, no, I can't commit to that for the next 20 years, whatever it is, okay? So, yep, I'm happy to put that in place. The foxglove is a pretty bad thing to control, and it takes a long time. But the landowner also has to be made aware by us of what we're asking them to do. So, people happy with that?
Yes?
Following Councillor O'Neill's comment on that, I would be just worried that, say, we put this condition on, they need a weed management plan. They say we can't commit to this long-term weed management plan. We're not taking those $4,000, and we just lean back and let it be. Because, like, didn't it say somewhere it's elderly people, they need, like, they struggle to do it themselves, so they presumably will use this money to maybe pay somebody else or get, whichever way I don't know. But, like, isn't there a risk by putting this weed management plan in, which my understanding is can be written by anybody? Is that still correct, or do I need another qualified person to write up this report and this management plan, and then those $4,000 go off up in smoke because somebody had to pay for some consultant to buy this report, for this report? That would be my concern. Just, we're basically opening the valve on their tires and letting the air out, and they get scared of, maybe we shouldn't take the money because we imposed under this condition, and we rather not do anything because we're too old anyway, so who will, bark up our tree? That would be my concern there, that they just said, just drop it. I would rather acknowledge the group's efforts to do it, and, I'm thinking, yeah, $4,000 is $4,000, but neither do I think this is so much that, to risk it that nobody does anything about it. I know from my own experience in our local land care group how difficult it is to deal with foxglove. We do it like at least twice, if not 3 times a year, with the entire community, as many people as can commit to it. We just go up and down Garden Island Creek Road and rip out every single plant that we can, wearing gloves, some of us wearing masks. So that's what we do, and it's still coming back. We don't have a grant, we just have a lot of good faith and will, and, luckily enough manpower in the neighborhood to just do it. But yeah, I would be just scared of, this imposition or this condition imposing a bit much of a burden onto the group, and they just drop it and don't do it at all. Whilst there is no goodwill to actually just do it. So give them the money and let them do what they need to do. I mean, if it was 40,000 grand, why not? But 4? Let them just do their
I
job.
suppose the opposite of that coin is spend $4,000, they get bored with it and do nothing in the future. And all of those areas that they sprayed but didn't know that they had to mulch or whatever. I don't know how skilled these people are, but potentially it could grow back even worse next time because you've opened up and it's nice, new, fresh areas.
Yeah,
So
don't
it's good to have a plan.
Don't they have to report back for the
So,
grant money?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. To your point, yes, always a risk with volunteers. Volunteers want to be in the doing, they don't want to be often in the planning. The intent is always to do a longer term management plan for this area. The plan is, the original intention is not to commit them to things that they don't want to do. It's just to have a plan of they are committed to working in the long term, just like your group is. What does that look like? What is the most efficient way to do that? It's not a statutory plan. It's not saying you must do this. It's just a plan of, okay, how are we going to tackle this? And this is what funding might be required for those different steps. And that's how we can use that document to demonstrate what we're doing in the space. I guess the proposal in front of you is to make that a condition of the grant, which was not something that was initially proposed by the panel. The panel was just saying we're going to work collaboratively with them, and we do have the internal expertise to assist them in making that, in developing that management plan. We do that often for a lot of landowners that are providing a sort of a broader benefit to the public. So, yeah.
Is Councillor Robertson happy to water it down a little bit in saying it's we want to see a management plan, so some sort of a plan for future control, but it's not statutory and it's not in 10 years' time we're going to come back and make sure there's not one foxglove glove on your property.
It's not a contract. It's not a contract, it's a plan.
Yep.
So I've discussed this with the director, and the concept being that there's not a holdback of funds to enable works, a timely initiation of works around seeding seasons and the right spraying window. It just makes it compulsory as an expectation, and I guess as an outcome of getting the grant funding, that you've got to actually do I don't want to just call it paperwork, because if the group works in with Council's NRM unit, it's the thinking and planning and prioritisation work of how do we do this most effectively so that we don't all hammer and tongs at it the first year and get burnt out. So it should be a better outcome, and it's not a contract.
There have been 14 properties and they've been doing it for 5 years, so they're sort of, it looks like they're pretty committed. But, I mean, I think the main thing is that it's being done right and actually dealing with the problem.
Which is the best practice that comes through a plan.
But maybe that's something that they could be provided rather than the onus being on them. That, you know, if we provide them with best practice for foxglove removal and say, this is what.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's what.
There's a standard condition in all of these that it has to be better or best practice methods utilised in the project.
Provide that guidance.
But we do. I mean, we have a vested interest in these because it leverages a lot of outcomes and outputs with quite a limited amount of investment, given our limited resources as a unit and a council. So we do where we can add significant value is in that technical advice, in that guidance, in that helping with planning, in that sort of monitoring space. And then they will have to acquit at the end of the grant.
I think that's the key to it, honestly. Just give them good advice.
Yep. Okay, so that now we have to decide, Lucas, whether you agree to, as the seconder, to those amendments, to that amendment.
Reading through it again, at the bottom of it, it says in the last sentence in the recommendation, after it says full support recommended, it says that somehow already. So the last sentence being, and that the next step for the project should be to develop a long-term weed management plan. So if that's already said in there, why do we need it to be spelled out again? It's already the recommendation. So, and if council or NRE is happy to support.
So where is
to
that?
support with, guidance and the weed management plan, then, like if the group comes back to council, they will be taken.
Yeah. As
In the doctoral report, there's the recommendation on page, 261? Down in the bottom of the recommendation section, it says the panel suggests the group be supported to deliver communications to share outcomes.
Yes,
And the next step of the project should be to develop a long-term weed management plan.
So I read that as after this grant, and I'm trying to nudge it forward so that potentially the spending of this grant is more informed by connecting with NRM to have a plan.
yeah.
Application assessment.
So can we, so we maybe
it's-
just ask
and
staff to
I
push it.
sorry, I hesitate to suggest that council writes the plan for community, because then that's council telling community what to do. Land care groups are about community having initiative and ownership and being supported by the expertise of council. So I'd rather the land care group owned the plan, but it be clear you need the plan sooner rather than later, and we get that expertise in.
Wouldn't, through land care, through the association, like their the overall body of land care,
Yeah, it has, yeah.
wouldn't they have? They don't have.
They wouldn't have a
Strategy,
template report and
Plans,
strategy.
Foxglove.
No,
strategy.
we've got template reports that we use in ours.
A template strategy.
For like a weed management plan template. Yeah, we have those. Yeah.
For Foxglove?
Yeah, it's informed by NRE, so we utilise that. And then we just apply it to, but again, to Councillor Robertson's point through you, Mayor, is that we work collaboratively. It's not us going to them and telling them what to do. It's their properties, it's their area. They often know best. It's us just applying a technical component and just advising on best practice in the space, but it's their project. So we're looking to work collaboratively in the space. We're not looking to go and dictate. So.
I think, yeah, certainly it can be looked at, and there's some among us that are viewing this development as plan as an onerous thing. I think the point was raised by someone earlier before that I actually think that once they have a long-term weed management plan, plus they demonstrated they've been doing this for 5 years, they're actually in the box seat to get ongoing funding to continue to help them. I think it's to their significant advantage, and council, with the resources that we do provide in kind to support these things, can make it as streamlined as possible to get this plan in place. I don't think it's an onerous ask.
Not if we've got the strategies already written.
I'm happy with that.
You happy?
Yep, let's say I'm convinced.
All right, so you guys are happy then to take,
Yeah, yep, okay.
Yep.
Just
Right.
vote on it.
Mayor, I've generally been concerned in the past about these grants to single properties, and I know the Foxglove one's got 14 properties, and I think that's great that it's a community working together. I'm assuming we've done a due diligence and all 14 are signed up to it and have given permission for the work to be done. Good. That was a yes, no? Yep.
That's a yes, yes.
So that one I'm okay with. The one I'm less confident about, I'm always nervous about the Bloggs family land care group, because it sounds like that's just one property on one space, whatever. And I note that the riparian restoration project along Wilcox Creek. So I suppose a couple of questions with that. It seems that it was influenced significantly by the fact that somebody said you need more demonstration projects in the Huon Valley. So the question I suppose I've got to ask is, are there more visible restoration areas that we should be going to other land care groups and offering them $4,000 to do a public, site for? The comment in here says they're going to invite other land care volunteers to participate. So I don't get the feeling that, what's the governance around what's a land care group and what's not, I suppose, is one of my concerns.
The land care group is that they're registered with Land Care Tasmania.
So for example, I could register the Commandy River Salmon Farm Land Care Group and ask for $4,000 to clear some willows out of my creek along the Commandy River.
You could ask, yes.
Yeah.
And as long as you abide by the grant, because don't forget there's grant guidelines that inform this. So as long as you abide by the grant guidelines, yes, you can ask for and may be approved.
I just thought the Commandy River does have a land care group, but I think it's.
but I think that's we're.
Broader concern, I suppose, I have.
That's
how engaged are these groups?
I suppose that's something that we need as councillors, not in this instance now. In future, we need to if we're going to set them up different or do whatever we're
Yeah,
going
well,
to
I suppose
do.
it's a feedback to the staff that, is this another form of middle class welfare sort of thing? And we've said no to another one that seemed to be somebody wanting to develop their salmon farm, so, their trout farm. So it just worries me a bit, and also the fact that we've only got 4 land care applications, how proactively, I don't know how many land care groups we've got, Lion, in the Huon Valley, how many active ones?
I think about 14 last I.
But they would all know that these grants are done.
We canvass them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we canvass them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
We've got to remember that different land care groups have different levels of capacity to
Yeah.
deliver, and some of them have existing grant funding projects that they're running. They don't take concurrent grants.
Yes.
So it changes.
So, for me, I suppose I'm just noting it as a concern about, I don't mind 14 properties who have all signed up and are working together long term. But if the only reason why we're approving cleaning up willows on one person's property,
It's not on the property,
Well,
it's
I
on
think
the
it
river,
is.
I think it is.
private.
Yeah, it's on a private property.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it says. So it's engaging. Yeah, I spend probably, I spend $3,000 or $4,000 a year cleaning up weeds on my farm, and it comes directly. I mean, maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I should be applying for the GOS eradication land.
You should go to the land care group, ask them to
Or
come.
grab my own. So that's my only concern with this. Look, it sounds a worthy project, but if the only reason was that we need more demonstration projects, I suppose I'm saying, shouldn't we be more strategic and say, where do we want the demonstration projects? And then go and set those up. That's all.
So, and we had this discussion and we came up with, not this one, but on any of the committees that Andrew went on for the awards. We talked about the process on how we do
This went
things.
through that process as well, or this was a different?
No, but I mean, we've got every opportunity to go back now and have a look at how this one works, or whether we want to put a councillor on the, we've got avenues to change. Yes, councillor Thorpe, you had a question?
My question is just following up from what Councillor Jessop's saying is, I don't recall, do we have a report come to council after these grants are acquitted? Like, do we actually see the outputs of these grants? Because I don't recall seeing I remember having this conversation now last year on NRM grants. We actually have never seen
Yeah.
It's in the annual.
It's in the,
report.
yes,
the annual report.
yes.
Well, yeah, it's in the annual report, but it's all, there's an
The
annual
NRM
report that's done. I forget when it's done, but yeah, that does effectively a roundup of the year in
What's
NRM.
happened. Yep. So, back to,
Where we were.
yes, please.
So we have a amendment saying that we want the Foxglove land care
We've got an amendment there
to
to,
have a plan.
so that would be adding in, or was that going to be an additional?
Yes.
Yep.
Through you, Mayor, it's in the grant amount section for the NRM Environmental Project Grant for Upper Crabtree Land Care Group. $4,000. The grant is on condition that a long-term weed management plan is developed for the project area to be administered through a grant provision condition and in consultation with Council's NRM unit.
Okay, right. So now we'll take that with a, and they've agreed to that. So we just go to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. Report number 18.006/25, Livability Framework, a community centric decision making model. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Yes, councillor Rozak and councillor Gibson. Do you wish to speak to this?
Just briefly, I guess I've mentioned and made clear already throughout workshops and previous occasions where we've been working through this livability framework, and I'm a big fan of this, as I believe that greater community engagement, which hopefully will happen once people understand that that we're inviting them to have saying more about what's actually happening in their neighbourhoods, in their communities, where they're most directly affected by the decisions that we make here at council. This is a great step. I'm really happy that this is happening. I would like to congratulate the team that has been involved with that for all the hard work that they have put in explaining to us how it works. I'm really looking forward for this to kick off. The survey that started beginning of April, we've heard earlier from the mayor that it's picking up momentum and there is a lot of feedback already. I've just done four surveys today with friends and neighbors in my neighborhood. I've got them in my bag. I'm just looking forward to drop them back in, and we're putting them out into our letterboxes. We just started printing them, and there will be a few more going out in my personal in my direct neighborhood. So yeah, just thank you to the team for the excellent work on developing this, for their great work to explain it to us, how it works, what the benefits are. And just thank you very much. It's a great approach to kind of make this valley even a better place, and I'm very much looking forward for this to start happening.
Thank you. I'm sure that staff will appreciate that. So thank you very much. Do I have, yes?
Mayor,
Councillor?
at the workshop, we talked about the principles, so they're on page 277 of the report going forward. And we talked about one of the key principles that wasn't in that decision-making matrix was maintaining the rural lifestyle of the Huon Valley. That didn't seem to get in there. So, and I thought we had general agreement on that.
Number, you say?
So page 278, so we've got the 277, we've got the principles, which is be transparent, honour First Nations, stay engaged, be contextual, be community-centred, promote inclusivity, protect the natural environment, maintain a future focus, balance actions, blah, blah, blah. So in the strategic plan, came up with food production and rural lifestyle, and that didn't seem to get in this document. So I don't know if I'm happy to amend it to say that they be added or that further work be done, or?
Mayor. So we did discuss it. You'll see the principle entitled Be Contextual is sort of a broader principle that captures that. So if you look under the statement section, this is page 278. Respect and enhance the unique characteristics and identity of places across the Huon Valley. These unique characteristics include the balance between rural living and agricultural lifestyles and needs to be preserved. So it's contained in the statement, but whether you want to, whether you want to bring it out as a separate item.
That I read that, I'd probably pull it out as a separate item, because I think the contextual bit there is much more about the village style of because we are very different in that we've got all those small communities, which is important. But I think, something that came out again through the LPS process and everything is that, while people value nature here and all that sort of stuff and protecting natural environment, they also want to protect the way they live in the community, which is that balance of rural lifestyle and agriculture. Because they're not always compatible, so having them transparently listed, I think, is a good way of balancing the debate.
Okay.
I don't think it covers it clearly enough. I think that's more towards the towns. If you look at the second column, it talks about the
Towns and villages.
Yeah, which I think is really important in their own right. I think we need to value in our planning all the towns and village. Franklin's a good example of where that's always a bit in conflict, and Cygnet as well. But I think the second part of that, I'd rather pull that out as the way we live or something like that, be a principle or something even. But
we have tried for a catch-all here, and the following one under Be Contextual, the Be Community-Centred, which is the needs, aspirations, and vision of the community at the heart of all decisions. Again, I think that's relating to everywhere we live, not just rural. It's also the urban settings. Between the two of those, what we've tried to do is create a broad brush that observes it all. But yes, if councillors want us to specifically draw out that rural lifestyle,
the way we live, I think, is
Yep.
It's a pet topic. I agree.
Yep.
And it's not the way everybody lives in the Huon.
No, well, and thinking about that, it's should we be talking about the balance, the diversity of the way we live, combining urban development and, because people keep saying, oh, you just focus on building more houses in Huonville and you forget all about the road in Leamington or the road, in Upper Woodville.
That's why we've got this big contextual, because we're, respecting and enhancing unique characteristics of places across, all,
It's too bad.
I think it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We've had the debate, now it's recorded for posterity.
You had the debate, we just listened.
No.
Sorry, Beth.
Okay, so in other words, we're not changing it. We can. Any other?
No.
No? Okay.
I'll second Councillor Morosek's statement.
Yep.
He said everything that I was about to say.
Yeah, right. Thank you for that, Lucas. That was much appreciated. I'm sure they will. Okay, well, if there's no more, I'll put that motion. All in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is carried. Okay, 19.018/25. We're about to move into closed council, so I'd like to thank
They've gone already.
for attending tonight. Ms. Smith for attending, and those watching at home. The recommendation is that the meeting now be closed to the public at
8:45 PM.
pursuant to Regulation 15 of the Meeting Procedure Regulations to discuss the following matters. Do I have a councillor to move a motion to go into closed, please? Yes, Councillor Armstrong, and the seconder was Councillor Gibson. All those in favour? That's all councillors. I advise that in accordance with Huon Valley Council's audio recording of council meetings policy, recording of the open session of this meeting will cease at
8:45 PM.